projects. I don't know if I'll put this out or not. It depends what happens. So obviously you've been thinking about other stuff, hopefully, during the lecture. But do you have any thoughts on the project now, having had? Some time to at least have it going in the backs of your minds, possibly. Are there topics anyone want to? Are there topics you like to look over? It's kind of interesting to see if everyone says the same, or maybe you just don't know at the moment. I'm not saying. I'm just curious at this point.
I don't know at the moment, but they seem interesting, all of them.
Okay, oh, that's good to hear. So you're nodding your head, is that?
I like some more than others.
Yeah.
But I think there are a few that I like, so not just one.
Right, yeah. What do you say?
Yeah, I would say it's similar that they are also quite interesting. Some would like personally me. Yeah, I would have maybe a few favorites which I would like to cover. Also with respect to, since I haven't looked into it, but I could imagine from how we talked about it that some seem to be a bit less complex when you have, like, it specifies, for instance, local air pollution against greenhouse gas emissions from air travel, so that the setup of the problems in some topics could be easier than in others.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, emissions of local air pollutions from point sources. So here, in that area, I mentioned in some previous lecture a US researcher whose name I couldn't remember, Meredith Fowley, she's called. I can't remember what I was thinking of then. But she's got several really interesting and pretty tough papers on that with theory and econometrics for US, based on US problems and US data. So in some of these, I've got quite specific literature in mind. But yeah, it's quite a different scope. There it's like, okay, there's some very specific papers that I have in mind there, doing quite nitty-gritty analysis, quite detailed, hands-on analysis. So it's like, so she's got a paper. There's a sort of typical paper which is this sort of second best thing, which is really interesting, where there's tradable, you can trade these emissions across different states, but then the different states have different ways of regulating other stuff. And then there's an interaction that kind of screws things up. So you can't, the states have these strong fixed ideas about how to regulate sort of investment support. And then you let the firms trade emissions, and basically the states that are supporting investment, those firms will invest a lot more in emissions reduction and then sell permits to the states without the investment support who will emit a lot more. And it turns out the states without the investment support are also the states with smog and ozone problems, with low-lying cities where the pollutants accumulate. So it ends up where the emissions occur to a greater degree in the states, cities where they do most damage. So it's a typical thing of the second best kind of stuff with different policies interacting with each other and screwing up. That's just one example of a paper. It's really interesting that you could look at on that one. Whereas obviously this the scope of that is kind of huge. I don't have specific papers in mind there. But there's plenty that I could think of. That, there's a lot out there. And given that you're supposed to focus on one or two papers, so clearly you would need to narrow it down. Yeah.
One maybe not so specific or not so related to the project itself, but the NOx emissions from diesel-driven cars. Is this also a topic here in Sweden? Because in Germany there's a quite big discussion because the producers basically manipulated mechanisms, and now the EU regulations in many cities that the concentration of NOx particles is too high in some cities, so they're like diesel. Some certain diesels are prohibited in certain cities to drive now, for instance. Like, is there similar stuff in Sweden or?
Not yet, but I think they kind of said that policies would be implemented. That home should be diesel-free in 2025 or something.
So it's been a huge thing in the news here, this whole diesel scandal and so on. But it hasn't been so much. I don't know if Volvo kind of got away with it, or if they don't seem to be implicated that much anyway. So there's So on that side, it hasn't been that big in Sweden in that way, and it also there haven't been that many policies proposals either. But I know it's coming. What made me think of it was an article in the Guardian about London, where they're introducing an emissions, a technology-based charging zone in central London. If you don't have like a Milia B, effectively a very low emissions car, you have to pay an extra like 15 quid to drive into central London every time you drive in, whatever the time of day. So if you're driving in during the day, then it's 25 quid, because it's 15 for the car, for the polluting car, and another 12 whatever for the congestion charge. So I mean, that's a super interesting area. You could do different stuff there. This whole, the whole diesel scandal thing is incredibly interesting. I mean, wow. I was actually at a conference about 3 years ago in Helsinki. Oh, we're going over time here. I'll keep it short. But I went to a sort of policy session. It was a general environmental economics conference, but I went to a sort of policy session on car emissions. And there was a kind of bureaucrat kind of guy there who I was really, really impressed by. I can't remember his name now. It was a sort of round table kind of thing with short presentations and then questions and discussion and stuff. And he had some really interesting and sensible stuff to say. And then about 3 months later, this whole scandal broke. And he was the guy who had kind of, or I guess there's more than one person involved, but he was one of the key guys in like realizing that there was something fuffens going on. There was this big discrepancy. He'd found this big discrepancy, I think, between the test results. I think maybe he thought these test results were like fishy, and then he commissioned tests of cars on the road and what are the actual emissions levels, and found like, whoa, they're like 10 times higher than the test, what the same car is showing in the test. And then they looked at it further and found that they had this, what they were doing?
Yeah, they had a switch or...
No. So they had a computer program that could tell, so even if you hand over the car to the testers, you don't know, you can't sort of throw the switch. But they had a computer program that could tell when the car was on a test bed and not on the road, because of like the steering wheel's not moving, and then as soon as the car picked up, instantly pretty much I guess, that it was on a test bed, then they changed the way the engine ran to basically the nitrogen dioxide emissions occur from the high temperature of combustion that you can achieve in a diesel car. And that's why they're more efficient as well, because you can have a higher combustion temperature. go over a kind of limit and you start getting a lot of nitrogen oxides. So then, as soon as the computer notices it's on the test bed, it retunes the engine effectively to combust at much lower pressure, lower temperature, and you get much lower power output per litre. But the nitrogen oxide emissions disappear, basically. And then as soon as you're back on the road, it's like back to the high efficient, highly tuned way of running and loads of nitrogen oxide. It's unbelievable. So like cunning. Anyway, yeah, we should stop there. We're over time. But I'll put a Google Drive page up. But basically, I want you guys, everybody, to get in touch with me as well, and we'll discuss like papers and things. So some of them I have ideas for papers, other I'm like, it's much more open. So if you already have ideas, you could come and talk to me, like, or if you want to think over lunch, you could like come, oh no, I've got meetings and stuff. Let me think. Oh God, I've got some Skype meeting in my diary, I don't know what it's about. At 1 o'clock. Just drop me an email, okay? It could be that I can find a space today, if it's convenient for you guys, rather than having to come, you know. Whatever, just yeah. If you want to have a chat today, drop me an email. And if I'm at my desk, I'll reply right away. Okay. So I'm pretty sure I have about an hour somewhere during the afternoon, probably between 2 and 3. Because it'd be just as well to, you know, try and get this nailed down as soon as possible, I guess, so you can start like playing with ideas and thinking a bit and reading a bit in parallel with all the other stuff. Okay, I'm going to stop there.